Christian Existence Project. I'd like to introduce my father and my mother, and I'm going to ask you guys a few questions about your marriage.
You didn't introduce yourself.
Andrew Russell. Thank you. How long have you been married?
It will be 23 years this July.
Dad, is that correct?
It
July
is
8th.
long years, if you know what I mean. But
How old were you when you first met each other?
Mom's
I was 28.
much older than I am. So
28. And
Do you
Daddy was
remember the
26.
first time?
yes,
Yes.
Would you like to expand?
she walked up to me in a bar.
No, don't listen to his story. It's not true. Because
She begged me to marry her.
No. Daddy was grumpy. He was at a bar with his friends being sulky and grumpy. I still don't know why. I was there with my girlfriend.
Because I knew my future was going to be altered
He was with
forever.
Uncle Kenny, and Uncle Kenny stopped me and started to talk to me and said, I want to introduce you to my friend. And he introduced me to Andrew. And Danny was there too that night.
Was he?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
And the rest is history.
Now, say one word that describes your marriage.
Soulful.
Committed.
And why would you say it's soulful?
Because I like Mom even when I hate her. I mean that.
There's
Seriously.
more I can say about myself.
Yeah, I love her. Every part of her. Even the parts that annoy me.
Commitment first came to mind because I think that you really need to be committed to a marriage in order to get through, all the different periods that you'll be faced in life. The happy times are easy. The sad times, there are hard times.
Like raising
there are
you.
fights,
That's a good one.
decisions, and you have to be committed to it.
What made you decide to get married to each other?
Mom begged me.
Well, I did have a goal to be married by the time I was 30, so maybe that had something to do. No, it just felt right. I didn't think, honestly. I met your father at a point in my life where I actually thought that I was never going to meet someone. I was actually sort of thought I would be single forever, and then I met your father.
Yes.
Are you going to answer that question, or would you like me to move on?
What's the question? I got lost in Mom's answer.
Why did you decide to get married?
I knew it. Actually, I told, you can ask Grandma. I told Grandma the next morning after I met Mom, that I think I met my future wife. I just knew it.
Okay, that's a lie, but
It's not
No,
true.
it's not. It's true.
God's honest truth.
That part's true.
can you describe your engagement, how you engaged, and the period of time that came along with it?
We were engaged for about a little bit more than a year, and the way I proposed to Mom was I wrongfully rented.
What you thought was my favorite movie with my favorite actress, but it wasn't my favorite actress or my favorite movie.
And so,
Do you know what my favorite movie is now?
yes, When Harry Met Sally. And instead I got, what was it?
Stranger Among Us.
And I screwed up Meg Ryan with Melanie Griffith.
Melanie Griffith.
Right.
Mhm.
But anyway, at the peak of the movie, I
You're
I
halfway
cut
through
out the movie at the peak, and then I popped into the movie,
So it was a horror movie?
and I
Kind of.
and I proposed to her. Okay, all right, we're gonna elevate this now, Ange. Good, that's smart.
What was your feeling after you were engaged?
Regret. It was just it was smooth.
Excitement.
Yeah.
We paid for our own wedding and we bought a house all at the same time. So I think there was, a fair amount of excitement, a fair amount of stress, but a good period.
Was there any doubts?
You always have doubts.
I didn't have any doubts then.
That's because you.
Maybe
Because you knew
now.
That's because you knew you were marrying up. Yeah, you always have doubts, but I was nervous on my wedding day.
How was the wedding day?
Rainy.
Rainy,
Humid.
rainy, humid, and lightning struck
Oh my gosh.
during our vows. I'll never forget that the church rattled,
Right after we were on the altar.
and we decided to ascribe that to
My father.
our father,
Mm.
blessing or cursing the marriage from heaven. so he must have blessed it because we're still together 23 years later.
What were you looking for in a spouse?
That's a weird question. I don't know. I was too young, too mature. I just
yeah,
knew that I loved
don't
it.
know that I had like a specific list. I knew what I didn't want.
I liked that Mom was successful. She was programming the navigational systems for nuclear submarines for the government. So I said, there's a sugar mommy for me in case I don't make it in business.
And Dad being employed was definitely a plus too.
Just notice your bar was here, my bar was here, just for the record.
How does the reality of marriage compare to the expectations of marriage?
You grow into a marriage, so you start off, everything's a honeymoon period, and then you have children, real life stresses come about, and that's when you really know whether the person you married and whether or not that person is in your foxhole. And for whatever reason, during our times of stresses, I can say that when we both have a collective goal, that's very difficult. We seem to really feed off each other's strengths and make up for each other's weaknesses.
How important is money in your marriage?
It's a great question. It's such a good question.
In the marriage, probably not important.
Listen,
When you're raising a family,
the reality is, and this is a good lesson for you, and this is the truth, Andrew, I was very ambitious to make money. What you learn once you have money is that money doesn't make you happy. It never does. It can make you comfortably miserable, so you can be miserable, but you're comfortable, because that's what money provides. So you only learn that lesson if you achieve some amount of monetary success. You've got to have it, and money also makes you more of what you are. So, money's great for many reasons, but the truth is, a strong foundation of a marriage and values and morals trump it all.
How important was similar values and religion?
Very.
that was very important.
Very.
I mean, I don't think we'd be married if we didn't
No, we
have that.
Mom and I had very strong, heated, at time, discussions about our religious values.
Mm-hmm.
How important is sex in your marriage?
Do you really want to know?
You really want to know that? That's pretty interesting.
No, I don't want to know it.
Yeah, now that you asked that, now that he asked
Right.
that, we
Moving-
can really make him blush and everything. I kind of like that question.
Moving on.
I'll explain to you how. I'll explain the way we conceived you.
How important?
So on the night we conceived you.
Okay, I actually have to get back to this.
Yeah.
How important was cultural background and educational background to?
It was important to me. I mean, I think when I was dating, I did have a certain, I did mostly date men who, were college graduates.
Well, considering I have no culture,
Culture, no, neither one of us.
Yeah, neither one of us have
whatsoever.
culture. It was important for me to marry.
But education
small.
was important to me. Mm-hmm.
Very big thing for me that Mom was so smart.
How do children affect your marriage?
They affect the marriage in a big way, but
Single greatest attribute
Mhm.
of a marriage, if you have a loving marriage.
How important was the idea of having children with each other? If Mom said she didn't want to have children, what would have that affected?
We would have not gotten married.
yeah, I mean,
Although it would
if we couldn't conceive, we would have always still had children.
Now, obviously, I know that I have an adopted brother, Luke. Can you tell me what made you adopt a son and just why?
Why did we decide to adopt Luke? Very simply, we wanted to have another child, and it wasn't happening naturally.
Do you want us to describe that?
No, thank you.
Okay.
And we already knew the joys of.
Stop, dogs! Stop!
We already knew the joys of adoption through the fact that you had at the time 3 cousins who were adopted, so it was not something unfamiliar. And we decided that we would adopt. We didn't need
I think the true answer was at the time, again, where we were wrong, was we thought it was our way of giving back.
No, I never thought that.
Well,
You may have thought that. I never thought that.
but then Luke landed up being just the opposite. Luke landed up being the greatest treasure that God ever gave us. So that's the irony in the thing with Luke. But it was kind of like, you know what? We have more love to give.
Yeah, I wanted another child.
We want another child, and it was reaching that point where I think we were going to. You had, if you were over 40 at the time, I don't think you could no longer adopt a newborn. So
No.
it was within that window.
Well, I was over 40.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess the expiration of something happened, right? It was the expiration of us
Yeah.
being approved to adopt, and we just decided with the last 3 months before the expiration to go ahead. And I truly believe it was a miracle from God, because people wait years. It all came together within 3 months for us.
What advice would you give teenagers who are dating and thinking about getting married?
That's easy for me. Getting married, communicate. It's the
Teenagers,
single.
though? I mean, I would tell teenagers they shouldn't be thinking about getting married. I would say get
It's
your education. You know, get your job. There's plenty of time for marriage in your life.
Now, what about a couple that was
And
getting
now
married?
that
Yeah, I mean,
a couple
just-
in their 20s is different than teenagers.
You'll hear. I mean, I think Mom, especially in the early years of our marriage, because I just wasn't built that way, taught me how to communicate. And if you communicate, you can work through anything. There's a saying that a dear friend of mine once said, which is so true: "The grass is never greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it." If you water your marriage, it'll be no better. But if you spend your time looking at other people's marriages, it's going to be a different situation.
A friend came up with that quote.
Yeah, Kenny. Uncle Kenny.
Well, if
He didn't come up with it.
He just
He
the
told
first
me,
time
he
you heard
passed it
was
along.
from him.
Interesting.
I give you smart aleck.
No, not at all.
Okay.
What advice would you give a young married couple that is experiencing difficulties and thinking about divorce?
Right along the same lines, you got to learn how to communicate.
Absolutely.
One of the things I've always said for me that works well, I don't like myself at times. If I could unzip myself from myself, I would. That's how much I dislike myself at times. So why wouldn't Mommy dislike me at times as well? And why should I be insulted by that? So
And
it's
I
actually
think-
a good. It's a
I mean,
good
people have to, married people, and it goes for any relationship. You can't read each other's mind. You can't expect your spouse to know what you're thinking unless you tell them what you're thinking.
And then not even that. If you're short on communication, the way you interpret something first time around, you could be so insulted. You don't clarify it. It's like a spider web. You can never find your way back. It's just you got to constantly communicate.
We had rules on fighting when early back in those days.
Yeah,
you
we would
know,
never go to bed angry with
Never
each
go
other.
to bed angry. Never hit below the belt.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm not saying we never ever did it, but
If you hit below the belt, you
That's
paid a
tough.
significant price, and you did a lot of groveling. Whoever hit below the belt.
but
Once we made up,
What do you mean hit below the belt?
like
You
say
say
things that you
things
don't mean. You know.
you don't mean, or you say something very, very hurtful.
Why do you think married couples nowadays are getting divorced more frequently than they have in the past?
lack of spirituality in their life. It's just so much easier because society now accepts divorce as just a part of every day. That instead of working towards it, working on your marriage and working towards improving it, you kind of sit there and go, you know what? I'll try the next flavor of the month.
I don't think people want to work hard for things anymore. They want instant gratification. They just want to be able to, click on something. And marriage is work.
And that's why it's so important, by the way, when you choose a spouse, Andrew, and I'm actually talking to you on this, you got to really say, can I live with this person for the next 50, 60 years of my life? So you really got to know them. You got to share at the deepest spiritual level the same values. Otherwise, you're going to run into some real problems.
How does God and faith play into your marriage? But I'm interviewing people, so can you please?
Wait, hold on. He's interviewing people. What people are you interviewing? You mean you're interviewing your parents?
Yes, and
I think it actually plays more of a role than I thought it would when I first got married, believe it or not. And I knew that I wanted to marry someone who was the same faith as me, and I knew faith was important and would be part of our lives. But I didn't really realize how important it would be until the years went on, and I have really seen how our family has grown and gotten through tough times.
I mean, we've only had one issue, right? When you think about it, because we put spirituality at the core of our marriage and our family, and the only issue is Andrew. You're going to want to edit that.
No, I actually thought I could expand on that issue and it would be good, and I'm glad you find this a joke. Looking back in your marriage, what would you do differently if you could?
I said to Mom, although she said no, she said she wouldn't do anything. We asked me this, and I said, if I could, I would have wanted to marry Mom a little earlier. Maybe, like,
Yes, I mean, I
earlier.
understand in a perfect situation, been nice if we had met each other earlier and
Early
had our
people,
kids
yeah.
younger, but we are who we are because of
Those
the road we
experiences.
traveled. So, it's kind of hard to do that. But I'd probably say I'd move us off Long Island further down south.
Yeah, especially
A long
considering we're
time
gonna-
ago.
yeah.
What would I do differently? I think in the early years of my marriage, I didn't maybe speak up enough. I sometimes was a little quieter. I think
That can be
That-
quite intimidating.
I think that maybe was the reasons why early on in the marriage we fought more, because I'd let things
You're paying a
build
price
up.
for that one now. Next question, somewhere you're paying a price for that. Go ahead.
This is an interesting question. Do you think a couple should live together before deciding to get married?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. I would fundamentally have a problem with that. You know how we feel about that.
Again, I do know how you feel, but I am interviewing and I'm trying to get answers. And
Well, at least you,
No, I think it
at least
makes-
you enunciated interviewing right this time.
I think that makes it difficult for people then if they're living together, because now you've put everything together, and then if it doesn't work out, you kind of become complacent. I just don't think you might actually get married to someone just because you're used to it, and now you share this place. No. I don't know. I just said what? You tell me.
That's disgusting. Hi, we're back after a little incident over there. If you'd like to continue explaining why you think a couple should not live together before you're married.
Because our faith tells us not to. It's very simple. It's God's commandments. And, the flesh will cause you to sin. Don't put yourself in environments you can't get yourself out of. So, living together, although conceptually I understand it, it's just spiritually, you're going to trip on yourself. No doubt about it.
Last question. What would you say is the key to a happy marriage?
Letting your husband answer all the questions on the interview.
Going away on vacation with your buddies as much as you possibly can.
No, key to happy marriage, and we said it earlier, communication for sure. Spending time together, investing.
Yeah, Ange, actually, you want to know when people ask me why Mom and I, on a serious note, if you stop smirking, the camera can't see you, why, people care about knowing about why our marriage is what I believe to be a really good marriage. It's when I started Stairway, I started to make my own hours, and every morning I would have coffee with Mom for an hour. And when I tell you that solidified our marriage, because we were communicating about yesterday's events, today's events, what tomorrow's dreams were. It was like,
Hypothetical events.
yeah, right, exactly.
But we do. We share spending time together, always making that time. It doesn't have to be date night. It's whatever works for a couple. For us, it was having coffee together for an hour.
Because we had 4 kids and you were ever consuming, because you were spoiled, so you would take away from time alone with Mom and I. So you're smart, Alec. Keep going.
Well,
So communication, spending, making the time for each other for whatever works.
You're definitely
for you.
not going into broadcasting, just for the record, because you're doing a horrible job as a question man.
well, I would like to thank you for your time, Mom. And
Hello.
gotta go.